Welcome to my film review of The Lion King. Now this is a huge blockbuster movie, and you can tell it is because of the fact that I think it's the first movie I've ever seen in both IMAX and 4DX. So hugely premium upgrades. Even for a Cineworld member, you still have to pay like another £4.70 for each to go in, and I've done both. And I've loved both of them. So, The Lion King, did it need to be remade? Just like Aladdin, just like Dumbo, we can have all these debates, but for me, probably the one movie of all the Disney movies that you could argue does justify a second remake is The Lion King. And this is what I was thinking. I've been listening to a lot of reviews on this, and people have been saying, did it need to be done, etc. And I totally get that, because I felt the same about many a Disney film, particularly Aladdin and Lion King. And then I thought to myself, well, hang on a minute. If you went to, say, a West End show to see The Lion King, isn't that essentially you going to see a remake of The Lion King? And you wouldn't go to that West End show saying, oh, but, you know, it doesn't compare to the cartoon, you know, the characters are different and all these criticisms. You go to the West End show and you appreciate it for what it is. It's a different take on a phenomenal story with amazing songs. And with that in mind, that's how I want to carry out this review for this movie. I am going to mention a couple of things in regard to how I felt they compared to the first, and parts that I was maybe a little bit disappointed on. But let's just summarise for a second here, right? This movie is a masterpiece. We've never seen anything like it. Okay, The Jungle Book. Now, I thought The Jungle Book was amazing. When I found out The Jungle Book was being remade, I was like, what? How can you possibly remake The Jungle Book? And it was phenomenal. The reason why it was phenomenal was because it was done in a completely different way. It was done with the amazing CGI animation, and it's spectacular. And this was just the same, if not slightly better, The Lion King. You know, it was absolutely sensational. Just a masterpiece. An absolute masterpiece. Just like I'm sure the Lion King shows are at the West End, they're a masterpiece in their own right. You know, this movie is equally an absolute masterpiece. So please, 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 please go to the cinema, enjoy this on the big screen where it deserves to be enjoyed, because this is like 1999 when The Matrix came out and you're like, wow, cinema's just gone up a notch. They've just created some new stuff that's groundbreaking, and as with The Matrix, we saw bullet time in pretty much every movie since where bullet time was justified. People have thrown it in, and you know, it's the same with this. It's a complete advanced step forward in the cinema world in terms of what they can now produce. It is like watching a documentary. The special effects are so good. I mean, I love watching documentaries, you know, David Attenborough stuff. My whole life I've loved stuff from Africa about these kind of the lions and everything, you know, and tigers. They're my favourite animal for documentaries, and this is like watching a documentary. It's phenomenal. It's just breathtakingly stunning. And yeah, with The Lion King as a storyline, which it's weird. I get any potential criticism about the fact that it's weird, but forget all that crap. You know, you go to the theatre and you don't go, oh, but look at their costume, they don't look like a real lion. And now this is the complete polar opposite. It's like they look too much like a real lion. Oh, but he looks too much like a real lion, and when his mouth sings, it just confuses me because I'm not expecting to see a real lion sing. Get over it. Just accept. It's a marvel. It's an absolute masterpiece. So listen up, right? I took my niece to see The Lion King in the 4DX seats, the moving roller coaster seats, and it was sensational. They had when the lions were running through water, you know, the spray up of water into your face and moving around for the chase scenes and everything. It was fantastic in 4DX. So I would definitely recommend seeing this in 4DX. It works brilliantly well. And just now, I've just come out of a screening in IMAX, and it was just breathtaking in IMAX. So please, again, if you can see it in IMAX, of the two, I don't know actually. It depends. They're both good in their own right. The IMAX was phenomenal because you're getting to see the visual spectacle on such a huge immersive screen. So in many ways that was better. But the 4DX worked really well for this movie because you're getting the spray of water and moving around. I'd say I probably favour the IMAX if I'm honest. But both are absolutely brilliant. So see this in an enhanced environment if you can. See it with the kids, see it as many times as you can, and you have to see this at the cinema. I mean, this is as close to a 10 out of 10 film as you're going to get. Obviously, I'm not going to give it 10 out of 10, and I'll discuss what and why, but ultimately, you know, this is pretty much a 10 out of 10 movie. If you want to look at it for it's a brilliant story. It's a cinematic, spectacular masterpiece. You know, what more do you want for a 10 out of 10 film? So, in many regards, it should be getting a 10 out of 10. But I'll judge it accordingly when we get round to that section. So yeah, that's ultimately what I want to say about this movie, is just judge it as a modern take on a classic. Don't question whether it should or shouldn't have been made. This hasn't been animators redrawing it out into a different cartoon form. This is a whole new technological breakthrough of cinema, and this is the first time we're seeing 100% CGI created landscapes in this way, you know, and enjoy it, marvel at it. This is a moment in history. So, you know, I look at it like that, and it's a stunning film. It's breathtaking. It's amazing. So, let's talk about some of the things from a critical point of view. Firstly, when I took my niece, she'd just been in a Lion place. It was her last year at primary school, and they did The Lion King as a end of term show. It was brilliant. Went along, loved it. It was phenomenal, really good. So she's mad into Lion King right now. And when I was watching it with her, her mum says she's not massively into movies. And in fairness, while we were about halfway through, she was asking me, how long's left, as if she was getting a bit bored and wanting to leave. And that was in the 4DX seats, which she loved. But I think, you know, the fact that it was on for 2 hours for a little kid, you know, she was getting a little bit bored. I was a little bit surprised by that, but again, her mum says she's not mad into movies and she gets a little bit restless. So there's a point of view from a child's perspective that maybe it's a little bit long, and, you know, maybe it's not as good as a cartoon from a kid's point of view. But from my point of view, I absolutely loved it. I think I'm going to give this just a rock solid 9 out of 10. It could, like I say, there's arguments to give it a 10 out of 10, but I'm going to knock it off a point just because of a few criticisms that I had, purely because it's following up on a masterpiece classic from when I was a kid. I love this movie, went to see it with my gran. Absolutely one of my most favourite. The Lion King possibly is my favourite movie. You know, played the computer game with my best mate when we were in primary school and all that. You know, memories, fantastic memories. So this movie is close to my heart, and because of that, it's getting knocked down a point because of a few little criticisms that I have. So let's just remind myself of what those criticisms are. So the main thing really was the voices of the characters. As soon as you see Pumbaa and Timon, in my head, I've got their old, cutesy, adorable voices that I remember from being a kid and probably having watched the movie 100 times. And then when those voices aren't how you remember them, the initial feeling is disappointment. Now, obviously, that's an unfair criticism because of everything I said earlier about going and seeing this and judging it in its own right. Like if you went to see the show at the theatre, you wouldn't be like, oh, but you don't sound like Pumbaa and Timon. It's a ridiculous argument, but it's the truth. It's how it made me feel as somebody who loved the original. You know, I was probably like 10-year-old kind of age when this came out. I was the absolute target audience for this movie when it came out, and therefore I can't help but compare it and tell you how it made me feel in comparison. And like I say, the voices were different. However, Scar's voice was phenomenal. Mufasa was fantastic because he sounded pretty much in my head like the original Mufasa, which some people might say it's a bad thing. Why aren't you changing things? But for me, I probably wanted everything to stay the same, but just see it in a different representation of cinematography, which, you know, is ridiculous. You're not going to remake a movie and keep everything the same word for word and have the same actors' voices, but in my head I think that would have been quite a remarkable movie if they had have done that, just because of how much sentiment I have with the original. But nevertheless, Mufasa's voice was fantastic. Sounded very kingly, just like it should have done. Scar's voice was brilliant as well, and I tell you what, the tone of Scar's voice and the delivery I thought was amazing. The way he pronounced his words and carefully raised and lowered his tone at certain times. Scar, for me, was the standout. If you want to award Oscars for voice performances, Scar gets the Oscar in this movie. He was fantastic. So that's a good. And then the bad is characters like Zuzu, who was played by Rowan Atkinson originally and was hilarious, let's be honest. Straight away when Zuzu was talking the bird, I was like, no, you don't sound the same, and it was a little bit disappointing. However, second time of watching, I've actually quite enjoyed Zuzu's voice. I'm thinking to myself, what was I originally fussed about? He sounds fine. So Zuzu is okay. Timon and Pumbaa. Pumbaa's played by Seth Rogen, which is probably the most perfect person you could have cast for Pumbaa, and it suits him. But at times I found Seth Rogen a little bit annoying, like his chuckly laugh. I don't know, I'm just picturing Seth Rogen when he makes that laugh rather than having it as an attachment to Pumbaa. So I found that a little bit weird and a little bit grinded on me at times. No offence, Seth Rogen, I love you as an actor, but that's just how I felt. And Timon, the meerkat, found it really weird. Like as soon as he opened his mouth, I was like, "Oh, are you playing a camp, a gay Timon?" You know, I was like, "That." I'm surprised. You know, you wouldn't expect. Personally, I wouldn't have expected that. Maybe the original Timon wasn't, and I didn't notice. I don't know, but I just found it a little bit weird that Timon, the little meerkat, was played by a camp kind of voice, and I found it a little bit annoying. Which was weird. I didn't expect to find that annoying, and I wouldn't in normal circumstances, but in this movie, animated kind of thingy, it just didn't seem to suit, and I found it a little bit annoying. And then I also found that Timon was grating on me, the fact that his attitude towards Pumbaa was so like righteous all the time. I started to find that a little bit annoying and a little bit bullying, a little bit like mentally bullying. It was like, you know, oh, you said that when he blatantly didn't. And it's like, it's kind of almost like mentally torturing Pumbaa. And I felt a little bit uncomfortable with that by the end of it because of how often he was doing it. And Pumbaa being so kind of thick was kind of going along with it and going, oh, God, sorry, yeah, I did do that. And I think, oh, that's mental abuse. That's kind of what it made me feel. Felt a little bit uncomfortable about that. And then we've got the hyenas. The hyenas, I remember being hilarious, like when he says, Mufasa, and he goes, ooh. That wasn't in it, which was disappointing because that was one of my favourite things. And he goes, Mufasa, 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 and ooh, you know, I loved that scene from the original. That wasn't in there. And the hyenas, their voices themselves weren't funny and adorable. The way they interacted with each other was supposed to be what was funny and adorable. And for me, it just didn't work. It was kind of like one was grumpy, one was, oh, let's hug and be best friends, and it kind of like, it was supposed to be funny, but for me it just wasn't funny. So that was a little bit disappointing. Didn't find the hyenas funny. So like I say, when you consider all those things, that's why I've got to mark it down one. But it's a little bit harsh to be overly critical of that by judging it on previous movie. If you'd have judged this absolutely on its own, it comes very close to a 10 out of 10 movie. But like I say, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10, which is still one of the biggest scores I'm going to likely give any movie. So yeah, it's phenomenal. What more can I say? Was there anything else I wanted to, any other notes that I've made? I think that was pretty much it. Oh, the songs. Sorry, one final point on my notes was the songs. Toe tapping, you know, the song comes on and you haven't heard it for like maybe 20 years or something, and you're, oh yeah, what a tune, I love this song, you know. And then once the singing kicks in, you're like, not with all of them, but with maybe half of them, once the singing kicks in, you're like, ooh. You know, when you hear a cover band do the song of your favourite band, it sounds identical, and you're like, oh my God, this could be my favourite band singing this song right now, and you're taken back to that moment when you saw your favourite band, and you feel in the moment. Well, it was the complete opposite. It was kind of like somebody doing a hatchet job on your favourite band's best song. So all these amazing songs, I mean, that's one of the best things about Lion King, the songs, and that's why it's such a good stage show musical, I imagine, is because the songs are so amazing. And unfortunately, like I say, probably at least half of the songs when they actually got singing, and because the actors playing the song are sound completely different, it's not their fault. It's not that they sang them badly. I'm not criticising the performance. I'm just criticising the fact that in my head, I'm like, oh yes, this song, I forgot about this song, I can't wait for it to kick in. And then they start singing, and it's like, oh, it kind of sounds nothing like what I had in my head, and immediately it just makes you want to go back and watch the original Lion King movie and hear the original songs as they were in your head from such a reminiscent time of your life that's nostalgic. So it's the nostalgia factor that is going against this movie. The fact that because everyone who's seen the original, you know, people my age, because you were there for the original, you've got this huge nostalgic feeling towards it. And whenever this movie doesn't deliver on that nostalgia, in your head you're criticising this movie. And like I say, the first time I watched it, I probably was thinking this was like an 8 out of 10. And since then, I've listened to some reviews, I've thought about it, you know, and judging it in that way is unfair. So I'm telling you how I feel, but I'm not overly judging it for these things. I'm just telling you that if you're somebody like me who love the original, be prepared for the fact that some of the songs are going to disappoint you a little bit. They're not going to be quite what you thought, not quite what you remembered. And that's a shame, but they, you know, they can't just copy the original. I get that. And the performances were good. They were just too different that it made the songs sound completely different, and it wasn't hitting that nostalgia spot with me and left me feeling a little bit disappointed. So I think that's all I can really say about the movie. I mean, it's amazing. Get your ass to the cinema, see this. It's summer holidays. Take the kids, take them twice, take them 3 times. You know, you're not going to get to see anything this spectacular on screen very often. You've got Marvel movies, and you've got this. It's top of the charts for reasons to go to the cinema. So forget all the average stuff that's out there right now, horrible histories and all that stuff. Forget all that. Just go and see The Lion King, go and see Spider-Man, you know, and see this movie as many times as you can possibly bear to see, because it's spectacular, it's fantastic. The only thing is that's going to encourage Disney to keep remaking everything, which, like Dumbo, didn't really work. Aladdin I thought was great, but you know, maybe that's just because Aladdin, and no, I love Dumbo as well. So like I say, we're going to encourage Disney to keep making these movies over again, which I'm not sure how I feel about, because, you know, nostalgia, do you mess with nostalgia? But it really is a movie that you need to go to the cinema to see, and see it again and again and again. See it in 4DX, see it in IMAX, see it in the special screens. It is absolutely worth it. So I hope you found this review useful. I've really enjoyed doing it. I've really enjoyed watching this movie twice. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next review. Goodbye.